Welcome to our World News program, broadcasting live from Algiers on All 24 News. I'm your host Islam Said, and up next are the headlines. Hezbollah fires over 320 rockets at 11 Zionist sites, declares successful initial response to Fuad Shukr assassination. Lebanese government demands end to Zionist aggression, and UNIFIL calls for immediate ceasefire. In Gaza, at least 12 Palestinians martyred in intense Zionist bombing of Khan Yunis. Zionist forces intensify ground assault on Rafah. New wave of displacement from Nusayrat and Bareej camps. Airstrikes hit Zaytun and Sabra neighborhoods in Gaza City. Also in our top stories, TCAD highlights need for cooperation with African Union for peace and development. Tokyo final statement isolates Morocco, affirms the right of all African Union members to participate. And UN supports 5+5 joint military committee's efforts for ceasefire and stability in Libya. Central Bank governor calls attempt to storm headquarters a serious threat. High Council of State rejects attempt to seize the bank. Hello again and welcome to the program. First in our top stories, Hezbollah displays footage on Sunday of Zionist military city sites it targeted, calling it the first phase of its response to the assassination of leader Fuad Shukr. The aerial footage shows bases, barracks and missile platforms in northern occupied Palestine. The group announced the launch of over 320 Katyusha rockets at 11 Zionist military sites, including in the occupied Syrian Golan. The group declared the first phase of their operation as fully successful. Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah confirmed the success of what he called the initial response to the assassination of Fuad Shukr. In a televised speech on Sunday, Nasrallah revealed that the ground had launched the retaliation, describing the operation as an intelligence failure for Zionist entity, which he blamed for the escalation on the southern front.
The claim that the resistance was planning to launch 8,000 rockets and drones, then later reduced the number to 6,000, and that these were completely thwarted and destroyed is false. In reality, we intended to launch 300 rockets in this operation, but we actually launched 340. Nothing was thwarted and everything went according to plan, with even more drones deployed than expected. A large number of drones, dozens of them, were deployed, though I won't specify the exact number for a reason. The enemies talk about striking strategic and precise missiles, ballistic missiles, and that they were intended to target Tel Aviv or any other target, and that they saved Tel Aviv and some vital facilities by destroying these missiles is completely false.
Hezbollah Secretary General confirmed that the primary target of the group's operation against Zionist occupation was the Galilee military intelligence base near occupied Jaffa, noting that several drones successfully hit the targets. Let's take a listen.
The specific military target that we mentioned we would announce later is the Israeli military intelligence base Amman Unit 8200 in Lilot near Tel Aviv. The primary target was this base, while the secondary or nearby target was the missile and air defense base. According to our data and some of our sources, a significant number of drones successfully reached these targets. But as usual, the enemy is keeping this information under wraps.
Hassan Nasrallah dismissed the Zionist occupation's claim of destroying thousands of Hezbollah rockets and intercepting many others as baseless allegations.
So in reality, we are dealing with an entirely false Israeli narrative filled with lies and baseless claims. This also represents an intelligence failure on their part, as they neither discovered our launch platforms nor our drones or their resources. The entire operation was successfully executed. It is a failure in intelligence and in preemptive actions. On the other hand, our military operation today was carried out precisely as planned, with the leadership, the fighters, the operational strength, and in the field.
Intensive Zionist airstrikes on several villages and towns in southern Lebanon early Sunday, resulting in 3 deaths and several injuries, according to the Lebanese news agency. The agency reported that over 40 airstrikes hit the region, killing 3 people in the towns of Tayri and Khiyam and injuring 2 others. Lebanon's caretaker government has called for an end to the Zionist aggression and the implementation of the UN resolution. Prime Minister Najib Mikati, an emergency meeting, urged to halt the airstrikes on southern Lebanon in adherence to the Security Council Resolution 1701. He also supported international ceasefire efforts in Gaza and plans to address regional tensions. For its part, the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon has called for an immediate ceasefire and de-escalation, urging the implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701 as the only sustainable solution. They emphasized the ongoing efforts to reduce regional tensions.
We call on all parties to cease fire, refrain from escalation and implement the resolution amidst the alarming developments along the blue line since early morning. We call on everyone to cease fire and refrain from further escalation. We call on all parties to cease hostilities and affirm that UN Security Council Resolution 1701 is the only sustainable way forward, and we will continue our contacts to strongly urge everyone to de-escalate.
Lebanese Economy Minister Amin Salam stated that overcoming the current regional situation deepens the outcomes of the Cairo negotiations regarding the Gaza ceasefire agreement. Speaking on the sidelines of a caretaker government meeting led by Prime Minister Najib Mikati, Salam expressed hope that the negotiations in Cairo will take a positive direction.
The main players today that are following up on the situation are the French, the Americans, the Qataris, and a number of Arab countries such as Egypt and others. The ambassadors were contacted after what happened today, and it seems that the reliance now is on what will happen in Cairo today and tomorrow. I believe that within the next 24 hours we will build on what happened at dawn today, and we will go in a positive direction. We hope this will be the case so the country and the people will be at ease.
On Sunday, travelers at the Beirut Rafik Hariri airport faced disruptions as several flights were cancelled. This follows Hezbollah's announcement of a preliminary air and rocket attack on Zionist military targets. Jordan's Royal Jordanian Airlines halted flights to Beirut due to the ongoing situation, with the state news agency reporting the suspension but not providing a specific time frame.
My flight was at 7:55 a.m. We checked in and everything was fine. At 8 a.m. we were informed that our flight to Jordan was cancelled. As you can see, we are sitting and waiting. It's a mess. And this is if the plane takes off. We don't know if it is certain that the flight will leave at 6 p.m. from here to Jordan. And we have to see there in Jordan if we find a place because our flight will be gone. It leaves at 12 p.m.
And now we move on to the latest developments in Gaza Strip. Occupation forces carried out 3 new massacres in Gaza Strip, killing 71 people and injuring 112 in the past 24 hours. The Palestinian Ministry of Health reports the total number of casualties has reached 40,405 martyrs and 93,468 injured, with many more missing or trapped under rubble. At least 12 Palestinians were killed and others injured in a Zionist airstrike on Khan Yunis. 6 bodies, including a child, were brought to Nasser Hospital, and 4 more were recovered from Hamad Towers, with 7 still missing as well. Occupation forces intensified airstrikes on Khan Yunis, targeting southern Gaza. Artillery fire hit Bani Suhaila, Al-Qarara, Huza'a and Abasan, and airstrikes affected areas threatened with forced evacuation. The ground assault on Rafah continued, with occupation forces demolishing buildings in the city center. Zionist warplanes carried out a series of airstrikes on the city center and eastern areas, while ground forces targeted the western region, including Tel Sultan and Saudi neighborhoods, with aircraft and heavy machine guns. Meanwhile, artillery and airstrikes targeted northern Nusayrat camp, eastern Deir al-Balah and al-Maghraqa. Drones bombed areas around the electricity company northeast of Nusayrat, and further strikes hit eastern Abu Rij and Maghazi camps, where residents have been displaced for over a week. Simultaneously, Zionist attacks on Gaza continued, with increased shelling on Zaytun neighborhood east of the city. Artillery fire targeted the area around Dawla Junction, as well as the vicinity of the University College and the Sabra neighborhood south of Gaza City. UNICEF spokesperson Tyson Graham confirmed that occupying Israel has blocked their access to Gaza for overseeing the polio vaccination campaign. Graham stated that occupation denied their entry permit, highlighting that while UNICEF operates normally in conflict zones worldwide, it faces significant obstacles in occupied Palestinian territories, including restrictions and risk to aid workers. We move on to the West Bank now. The Palestinian Prisoners Society and the Palestinian Prisoners Group reported that at least 23 prisoners have died in occupation jails since the Gaza conflict began. This includes those officially reported by the occupation, which is withholding many identities. The latest death was the 19-year-old Zahar Tahsin Ridad, who died on Sunday due to medical neglect after being injured and used as a human shield during a raid on Tulkarm refugee camp. The TICAD conference in Tokyo emphasized coordinating international efforts with the African Union's Agenda 2063 and 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. The final statement stressed supporting the African Union-led peace process, sustainable funding, and UN Security Council reform in line with the African position. The final statement of the TICAD conference reaffirmed the right of all African Union member states to participate in TICAD meetings. The ministerial statement confirmed this right by adopting the term African Union member states, as stated in the joint statement first paragraph, rejecting Morocco's attempt to impose a formula based on UN-recognized states.
Ministers and minister-level officials from Japan, Egypt, and 40 other African countries met in Tokyo for a 2-day ministerial meeting of the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, culminating in the adoption of joint communique aimed at strengthening collaboration ahead of the next year's summit. The meeting, held August 24-25, addressed a wide range of topics including health, climate change, and business. During the discussions, the ministers agreed that reforming the UN Security Council is indispensable for addressing historical injustices against Africa.
The European Youth Parliament urged the US and the European Commission and the EU member states to uphold international law in Western Sahara. The Parliament's recommendation stressed adherence to human rights and international legitimacy, noting that while some EU states have questioned US policies on issues like Western Sahara, the EU has not formally condemned Washington's stance.
The European Union has not condemned the way the United States handles international affairs, even though some member states have publicly questioned the legal and ethical aspects of those affairs, as in the case of Israel and Palestine and Western Sahara. The U.S. Department of State is called upon to respect international law as defined in the International Covenant on Human Rights, as well as other international treaties, such as the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination.
Stay with us for the latest updates on the presidential election campaigns in Algeria after the short break. Independent presidential candidate Abdelmajid Tebboune vowed to continue recent achievements and promised to enact a new law for teachers and doctors by year-end. At a rally in Iran, he emphasized his commitment to support socially vulnerable groups if re-elected. Tebboune announced reopening 51 companies previously controlled by corrupt entities and creating thousands of jobs through major projects like Arjbilat by mid-2026.
تحيا الجزائر تحيا الجزائر منتصرة. الناس اللي كانوا في وقت فات في مناصب هشة.
People who previously held precarious jobs with an uncertain future, not knowing if they were employees or freelancers, and who received a bonus of 5,000 or 6,000 dinars, we have integrated all of them and made their positions permanent. Now, they all have official positions. Nearly 500,000 young people have been integrated into the public sector, administration, the public economic sector, and even the private economic sector. I hope that we continue on this path until we completely eradicate unemployment.
نتمنى إن شاء الله باش نواصل بهذه الكيفية حتى نقضي على البطالة ولكن في انتظار.
However, while we are working towards this goal, we have not abandoned our youth. We have instituted this unemployment benefit for them, which we will increase starting in early 2025. This benefit started at 13,000 dinars. We increased it initially to 15,000 dinars, and it will approach 20,000 dinars by early 2025. I'm aware that this is not enough, but at least it preserves the dignity of our young people. Today, 2 million unemployed young people benefit from this allowance, some of whom are still in training, receiving the allowance while waiting for stable employment, so that no one can mislead you. I'm aware that this benefit is not equivalent to a salary, but I want to remind you that we are the only state to have instituted such a benefit.
ولكن هذه المنحة احنا الدولة الوحيدة اللي دارتها.
Presidential candidate Abdel Hassan Sharif of the Movement for Society and Peace described the upcoming elections as critical and decisive. At a rally in Galma, he emphasized his party's role in taking on historical and political responsibilities by participating with a new political project aiming to offer opportunities for Algerians. He highlighted that their participation underscores political pluralism and strengthens the nation's unity through competition based on programs and ideas.
نحن أدركنا أن هذه الانتخابات مفصلية وحاسمة.
We have realized that these elections are crucial and decisive, and therefore we take on our historical and political responsibility to participate in them, not only as candidates, but also as bearers of a project that brings hope, opportunity, and optimism, a bright project for the Algerian people. We also take on the responsibility of ensuring that all Algerian people are treated equally to preserve the state, and to make it clear that their politicians and candidates are competing for power, because that constitutes true democracy and real pluralism.
جعل الشعب الجزائري كله في صف واحد من أجل الحفاظ على الدولة وأن سياسييه.
We present this country as a model school for the acceptance of pluralism, the acceptance of alternative in power, and the rejection of all manifestations that attempt to perpetuate unilateralism.
جميعا وأن نتنافس على قيادته بالبرامج والأفكار. نقدم لهذا الوطن مدرسة النموذج في القبول بالتعددية والقبول بالتداول على السلطة والقبول بنبذ كل المظاهر التي
We are working to make our participation in these elections decisive and crucial in consolidating the opportunity program that brings opportunity for all Algerians.
منافسا من أجل تكريس برنامج الفرصة.
In Libya, UN Deputy Special Representative Stephanie Khoury affirmed the missions and the international community's support for the Joint Military Committee 5+5 in enhancing the ceasefire and stabilizing the country. She described the committee's recent meeting in Sirte as positive and crucial, emphasizing the need for unity among Libyans to build a state, achieve stability, and advance the peace process. Central Bank Governor Sadiq Al-Kabir reported an alleged storming of El Bank's Tripoli headquarters to the Attorney General. He blamed the Presidential Council for the incident, calling it a serious threat to the bank and warning of a negative impact. Al-Kabir also noted that the Council's decision were invalidated, by the House of Representatives.
We refer to you this report about the incident for jurisdiction and for taking the necessary legal measures inherent to it. We also inform you that this act poses a serious threat to the most important financial institution in the country and will have negative repercussions both inside the country and abroad. We hold the Presidential Council and those involved with it in this act fully responsible.
The Libyan High Council of State has rejected the Presidential Council's decision 19 and 20 on appointing a new central bank governor and reforming the bank's board. The council denounced these decisions and attempts to seize control of the bank and urged both local and international entities not to recognize the newly appointed management as it deemed illegitimate.
The High Council of State affirms its complete rejection of these decisions as they were issued by non-competent parties. We also warn local and international parties not to deal with the administration in charge as it is illegitimate and usurps power. We confirm that the Council will take all legal measures to preserve its rights in accordance with the political agreement and the constitutional declaration.
To a different matter now, French authorities detained Telegram founder Pavel Durov at the Bougie airport on Saturday. He arrived from Azerbaijan and was subject to an arrest warrant. Pavel Durov will appear before a French court on Sunday following his detention on charges related to alleged violations by the encrypted messaging app. The Russian Foreign Ministry announced that its embassy in Paris is taking steps to clarify Pavel Durov's detention. Spokesperson Maria Zakharova accused French authorities of refusing to cooperate with Moscow.
The Russian embassy in Paris will begin working immediately, as is customary when Russian citizens are detained abroad. We have immediately requested that the French authorities explain the reasons for this detention, protect his rights, and allow a consular visit. So far, the French side is refusing to cooperate on this matter. I remembered how a group of 26 NGOs condemned the Russian court's decision to block Telegram in 2018. Do you think they will now go to Paris and demand the release of Durov, or will they keep silent?
To Sudan now, the ongoing armed conflict, flooding and resurgence of deadly flood-related diseases are worsening the humanitarian crisis, deepening despair throughout the country. Marwa Bilayar has more.
At least 114 people have died, 281 have been injured, and over 110,000 have been directly affected by the floods that have struck Sudan since June. The torrential rains have also caused significant damage to crucial infrastructure in areas already crippled by over a year of armed conflict. In the northern state, residents are struggling to manage the aftermath.
It rained on us, but they were planning mistakes here in the locality of Abu Hamid because they built stores out of straw and shops for women to sell their products. All these structures were made of palm leaves and wood. The floods destroyed a housing block, and the impact of the floods spread and affected the homes in the neighborhoods of El Jouz and El Salam.
The collapse of water supply, drainage, and waste management systems has created conditions conducive to diseases such as cholera, malaria, and dengue fever. Adding to the turmoil, more than 10 million people displaced by the ongoing conflict are now living in makeshift camps or on the streets. The recent floods have exacerbated their plight, leading to severe shortages of food, clean water, and essential supplies.
We came here as refugees and we were given tents. Yesterday there was a downpour on our camp after the dawn prayer. I suffer from diabetes and heart disease and I haven't had breakfast yet. Even the medication, I only received one strip of my diabetes medicine. I hope they will transfer us to another camp and try to bring us back home.
Everywhere you look, there are scenes of devastation. Sudan is in a state of distress, grappling with the dual crisis of war and natural disaster.
Eastern Bangladesh is facing severe flooding as monsoon rains engulf the region. The death toll has risen to more than 30 and over 3 million people are still stranded. Salman Sib reports.
Rescuers are scrambling to evacuate flooded communities after heavy rains inundated parts of Bangladesh and northeast India, killing at least 36. According to the latest daily disaster situation report by the country's National Disaster Response Coordination Center, nearly 5 million people were affected due to floods in 11 out of the country's total 64 districts.
We could not retrieve anything from our home. When it started to flood at 11 p.m., we were sleeping. We did not know it was going to be so dangerous. In the morning, when we stepped out of our home submerged in knee-deep water, the water along the roads was nearly as deep as our necks. We just came out with our lives intact.
Abdul Halim is one of millions of Bangladeshis who have been displaced from the mud house several days ago when a 10-feet-high wave hit his village. This 65-year-old farmer returned to his destroyed home in Comilla to see what he could salvage.
I used to live in this mud hut with my family. Strong current of flood water destroyed the house. So I sent my family to the shelter and I'm guarding the household. There is no way of living here anymore.
Locals could be seen climbing into rescue boats to seek shelter in the city of Feni, one of the country's worst-hit districts, to reach several nearby remote villages affected by the flooding.
All of the floors of that high school building, another primary school and madrasa buildings have been turned into shelters for people. Many people with multi-story buildings started taking in affected people.
The ongoing flash floods in Bangladesh has rendered over 2,000 mobile towers inoperative and severed key rail and road connections. The floods have also displaced around 2,000 people and damaged over 350,000 hectares of crops, with 1.1 million people still without electricity. The disruption to communication networks continues to pose significant challenges.
More news stories making headlines around the world in this report.
Recent attacks have resulted in 11 deaths and 15 injuries from Russian bombings in Ukraine, while a Ukrainian raid on Belgorod, Russia, killed 5 and injured 12. The violence has surged since Ukraine's offensive on Kursk.
Thousands of Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar braved heavy monsoon rains to mark the 7th anniversary of their exodus from Myanmar. A communal prayer during the event brought many to tears as they huddled together in the storm.
In Ternate, North Maluku, Indonesia, severe floods on August 25th resulted in 13 deaths and 6 missing. The floods damaged homes and buried residents in mud. Rescue workers used excavators to recover several bodies.
Thousands from around the world attended the Notting Hill Carnival in London on August 25th. This annual Caribbean celebration, held since 1966, spans 2 days over the August bank holiday weekend and takes place on the streets of Notting Hill.
That wraps up our news program for today. For more updates, you can always check our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, X and Instagram. Thanks for watching. Take care.